Why is buy-to-let not profitable in 2023? Well, when we look at buy-to-let historically, where it came from, how it works, essentially it's the idea of purchasing a property, renting out somebody, collecting some income each month. Over a period of time, that property is likely to go up in value quite considerably. And hey presto, at some point in the future, you'll be very rich from what you've done now. That's essentially what buy-to-let is. And it was good old Margaret Thatcher, back in the early 90s, that kind of really rolled this out and made us a nation of homeowners and encouraged us to get into property. Buy-to-let mortgages were formed. There's also the AST in its current format, the tenancy agreement. All this sort of stuff happened in the late 80s, 90s, this sort of period. And the country had a fascination for buy-to-let, and a lot of people made a huge amount of money from buy-to-let. But what's the challenge today? Why doesn't that work so well today? Well, one of the biggest challenges for this is property prices are significantly higher than they were years ago. So it's no longer buying a 70 or 80,000 pound house. Now it's buying 150, 180 or 200, 220,000 pound house at least, in order to be able to then provide that as accommodation to somebody else. You need to then spend some money renovating and improving that property as well. Many people will choose to use mortgages as a way to do this because they don't have access to that sort of money. So that means they're putting down a 25% deposit. They're paying stamp duty. They have to pay the additional 3% stamp duty over and above the standard rates. So you're paying a big chunk of stamp duty in order to purchase the property. And if they're purchasing a property in their personal name, the taxation is now set up in such a way it's really not appealing. It actually can be very expensive in a negative cash flow way, you'll be losing money each year by setting up in your personal name. For people, especially that are higher tax earners, it doesn't make any sense. Now, if you've just got one property in your personal name, you could probably do that. But when you are building a business in this way, you should be thinking about setting up in a company because it's a little bit more tax efficient. But that isn't all the challenges. Then you've got the issue with regards to interest rates. Interest rates are currently so high because inflation is high, the government constantly increasing interest rates to be able to bring inflation under control, that actually it doesn't really stack, it's not viable. So what I mean by that is, once you work out what the cost of the mortgage is going to be, let's say the mortgage is going to be 6-7% that you're paying for the interest on a buy-to-let mortgage, then the rent that you're going to collect, maybe although rents have gone up, it may not even be enough to cover the mortgage. And if that's the case, then the lender won't provide you the mortgage in the first place. So that's a challenge, just being able to get the finance to be able to purchase a property. Or it may be you need to put a lot more money in order to be able to purchase it. So rather than being a 25% deposit, it might be a 40% deposit, for example, you're putting in to purchase a property. So a lot more cash. And then even if you're able to do that, when you look at the small profit margin you're making each month, as a return on your capital that you've invested, actually that return is quite low. Now, the only time it makes sense to do that now is if you really don't need any income from that property. Your intention is to hold that property for the next 10, 15, 20 odd years because we believe the prices will continue to increase and go up. So although you won't make money each and every month now, at some point in the future, because the increase in value, you'll make a significant amount of money and maybe you'll utilize that money in retirement. Maybe your kids might benefit from it, but you're not going to make really money from that today. And that's one of the reasons more and more landlords are leaving the buy-to-let sector. They're moving away from having property because the taxation is so high. There's lots of other challenges as well in terms of being a landlord today, particularly around regulation as well, and more things that are becoming responsibility for a landlord, making it harder to really operate this as a business. And when we think about those things, what will actually happen is there'll be fewer rental properties in the marketplace. The government is not going to step in. They're not making any more. They're not building them. They're really making it very difficult for current landlords. And if the stock levels reduce, the rents will continue to go up. Then at some point, for those few that are still left in the market, they may be better off because the rents are going to continue to increase. But then you also have to think about how much higher are they going to go to a point where they may be unaffordable for people as well. So when we take these things into consideration, buy-to-let makes no sense whatsoever in my mind in 2023.